Hello everybody and welcome to my galley. My name is Jamie Wallen and you are in my kitchen. So what we are doing today is making one of my favorite recipes for the summer. In fact, I think it is the thing that tastes like summer, is fried green tomatoes. Now, I was raised on fried green tomatoes. I remember the first time I ever had them, my mother made a batch for me when I was about 4 or 5 years old. It was just me and my mom living in an apartment, and she must have gotten some green tomatoes from somebody at work. And I remember she made a batch of pork chops, breaded pork chops, you know, the kind that you shake and bake in the oven in a bag. And those were incredible. I remember eating most of those. But also the side dish that I had for the first time, that she made the first time I can remember, were fried green tomatoes. My mom was from the Kentucky hollers, and so it was one of the things that she brought with her from her culture. Um, so I remember them very well, and at the time, I remember the first time I took the bite into my first fried green tomato. Um, I spit it out. I hated it. I thought it was absolutely horrible. And then I don't know what happened. The next summer, I remember she made them again, and for some reason, my taste buds had matured to the point that I liked them. They were very good. And every year I seem to like them a little bit more. And I think a lot of that is because of the memories that they brought with them. And for me, they do. It is the minute I bite into my first fried green tomato of the year, I know that summer's here. It's kind of one of those benchmarks for the summer. So nonetheless, I was out in my garden today, and it was the first year that I'd actually grown tomatoes at the new place. We're in the city, and we had a giant sycamore tree cut down because we couldn't have a garden. And so now we finally have a garden, and I went a little crazy and planted probably about 40 tomato plants in this little backyard, as well as some basil and a few other things. And now we are making use of all of the tomatoes. And aside from making some wonderful freezer tomato sauce, because I don't can, I decided that next year would be my first year to actually go back and revisit another art form of my mother's, which would be canning vegetables. We had a wonderful basement that was just full of preserves, as well as tomato sauces and all sorts of pickles and those wonderful things from the bounty of a garden. So back to our fried green tomatoes. So yesterday I saw some amazing sized green tomatoes out in the garden because I was going ahead and harvesting all of our basil because it's the end of the season, and yesterday when we woke up it was 42, so I knew it was time to start harvesting some of our plants that we've grown in our backyard garden. Um, but when I saw the tomatoes, I thought this would be a perfect opportunity to make some green tomatoes for a lot of my friends locally, and to also, when I've made them before, I have been asked many times to give people the recipe. So now I have a place to point them. So with that being said, one of the first things that I do is I go ahead and I pick the tomatoes, and I then go ahead and wash them in the sink, and I make sure to check for any dirt. Now, we didn't use any type of pesticides or any type of powders or anything in our garden this year because it was our first garden in this yard, so we kind of kept it pretty natural and organic. So it wasn't too bad to clean everything off. There wasn't a lot to worry about. Um, and then the next thing we're going to do is we are going to go ahead and core the tomatoes, take out that little nub, as well as take off the end and take off any little dark spots. This is my little catch-all bowl, and what I use that for is for my compost. Of course, with the new garden that we're going to be adding next year, I'm going to go ahead and keep working on the compost pile that I started this year, which has been an interesting process. I love using these cores. These are amazing. If you do anything with tomatoes, these are a must-have. You simply use it. It's got little spikes in it, and you simply core out your tomato. Now, this one has a little bit of red, but I'm not going to worry a lot about that. I'm still going to use it. It's not too red. It's still going to be a wonderful flavor. Look at that big guy. And this, I'm actually going to cut this in half after I core it. Or actually, I might go ahead, break it in half now, and core it. Now I'm going to set these in a bowl. Set them off to the side. One of the things that I've already prepared is I prepared a bunch of cookie sheets, and I've layered them with paper towel, so that way when we slice the tomatoes, we're then going to put them on the cookie sheet, and we're going to lightly salt both sides, and we're going to let them set for about 15 minutes to a half of an hour. And what that's going to do is it's going to release all of the extra water in the green tomato, so that way you don't end up with soggy green tomatoes. I like it when you bite into them and they have a nice, almost like a crunch, and you can kind of work your way through it. So anyways, to use the salt on the slices of the green tomato will go ahead and help the tomato release all of the water. So now I've cored this, and again, everything's clean here. So I'm going to take off the very bottom, and I don't need to take off that much. Again, I like all of the goodness of this. And what I like to do is I'm going to slice some at a half of an inch, and then I'm going to slice some just a little bit thinner, because I like both sizes as I do that. I'm going to just make sure I've got a nice sharp knife. I'm going to line that up. Now you could use a mandolin and go ahead and slice your tomato that way. Now also, one of the things that I do, this would be the main meat or slices of the tomato. Again, now we have the top, which is going to be a little bit hard to put the coating on. And so I'm just going to take off just a little bit, shave off a little bit of that top. Again, I don't want to waste any of that tomato. And I'm going to set this aside, grab our next tomato, and continue, and work our way through all of the tomatoes. Okay, so now you can see we have all of our tomatoes sliced, and they're all sliced fairly consistently between two different sizes. And when I put them in the pan to actually fry, I'll make sure that I will put the like with the like so that way I can time them all together. So now what I'm going to do is we're going to go ahead and we're going to start putting them on our pans. And I have a lot here, so I want to make sure to fit as many on there as I possibly can. There's some big ones. Squeeze in some of the little guys. Now what we're going to do is we're going to salt the top, flip them, salt the bottom, let them set for about a half an hour, and then we're going to pat them dry. I don't need to put a lot of salt, just a little bit to start drawing out that fluid. And we'll set this one aside, grab another. And repeat that process. Now I'm making an extremely large batch of the tomatoes because I'm going to show you towards the end how I flash freeze them so that way I can enjoy them in the air fryer a little later in the season or this winter. Now what I'm going to do is, again, I'm going to set a timer for 15 minutes. In 15 minutes, what I'm going to do is flip them again so that way the paper towel can help drain them. I'm going to throw some paper towels on top as well, just to kind of absorb any of that moisture that's left over after I flip them. Traditionally, the green tomatoes are dredged in some flour, they're dipped into an egg mixture, and then they are rolled in cornmeal or cornmeal in flour mixture. And I'm pretty traditional a lot of the times, but sometimes I actually do remember that what my mother would do was dig through the cupboards, and anything we could find, if we were low on cornmeal, if we were low on flour, we would actually use to utilize all of the food and not have waste. So we just finished some classes, and so I have leftover potato chips in the snack sizes. And also sometimes what I like to do, because traditionally, again, the tomatoes would be fried in bacon grease. And since I don't do a lot of pork or bacon product because of a heart issue, what I do is I'll use some vegetable oil, but I do like that bacon flavor. Now, when we finish the tomatoes, I actually have some vegetarian bacon I'm going to use. You could obviously revert to the traditional method and fry up some bacon and fry up your tomatoes in the bacon grease instead. And then, of course, save that wonderful bacon for something else. I do miss the bacon, trust me, which is why I am going to actually use some vegetarian bacon at the end and make some wonderful fried green tomato sandwiches. Now, that being said, also, along with the other things that we would dredge it in with the cornmeal flour mixture, what I like to do is use some imitation bacon bites, and I like to ground those up and put that in the mixture just to give it that little bit of flavor. So I'm going to bring you down and show you exactly how I'm going to mix all of that together and then put it in with the cornmeal mix. Okay, so I have a gallon size plastic bag. I'm going to go ahead, open the chips, open the Fritos, I have a friend that uses the cheese flavored tortilla chips. Probably use the ranch. You know, anything will work. Again, we're going for that wonderful crunchiness. I'm going to go ahead, throw in some of the imitation bacon. I'm going to close this part of the way, but I want to leave a little bit of an air opening. And now, use my pin, and I'm going to crush. Now it's up to you how coarse you want to grind those. So now we've got them nice and coarsely ground, and now we're going to go ahead and we're going to mix up our initial mix. My timer just went off, so I'm going to go ahead now and I'm going to grab some more paper towel and I'm going to go over the tomatoes, flip them, and keep draining them for the next 15 minutes. And we can see that moisture is being released, so that we're going to have some wonderful, crispy, delectable fried green tomatoes. Okay, so now I have my tomatoes completely dewatered, so to speak, and I patted them, and so now they don't have all the excess sodium on them either, and they're dry and they are ready to be coated and then fried. So my first bowl has just plain flour. That's all that I have in here. You can use self-rising flour, you can use all-purpose. I'm using all-purpose because that's what I have. You could use wheat flour if you want to be a little more healthy. And this is going to be the first dredging before we actually dip it into the egg mixture. So this is number one. I'm going to set that aside. And now we're going to mix up our final coating. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to start with yellow cornmeal. I don't know why, I think it's the color, but I do like the yellow cornmeal more than the white cornmeal. And I'm mixing it in a big bowl because I have a lot of tomatoes, and I don't want to mix it in the bowl that I'm actually going to dip it in, simply because I'm going to use this to refill this, and then whatever's left over I can actually put in a baggie, and I can save that for some chicken or tofu or something else that I might want to add a nice crispy breading to. So we're going to start, of course, with our cornmeal, and I just put a nice amount in there. I don't measure this. And then I like to do the panko plain, and I want to make sure that I specify definitely the plain. I don't want like the Italian breadcrumbs or anything like that. It's going to add an odd spice. So I'm going to put that in there. Actually, I'll add the whole thing. And then I'm going to add the crushed chips and corn chips, and I actually put a few onion flakes in there, dried onion flakes. I am also going to add a little bit of, instead of just salt and pepper, I'm going to add some Montreal steak seasoning. And that's got all the stuff in it. It has the salt, pepper. It also has, I believe, a little bit of garlic. You could add some garlic salt. I'm sorry, garlic powder. I don't use garlic salt, but garlic powder, onion powder, whatever you want to this. However you want to flavor your breading for these, you can. I'm going to mix everything up. That's pretty. And this is wonderful for chicken as well. You know what else can work really good, and I've done this, I did this last year when I did, nope, year before, because we didn't have any green tomatoes last year. But that was the first year I've never had green tomatoes. But the year before that, I actually used some of the cheesy crackers in the breading. And of course that was great later on chicken. Or tofu, if you are vegan or vegetarian. I am veganish. Right after the heart attacks, I actually went full vegan. And I had done raw food for years earlier on. And regular vegetarian. You know, I haven't done a lot of meat in my life. You know, I'll dabble. And then my conscience gets to me. And I think, oh, I want to stay healthy. I got a lot of things I want to do. Okay, so that's nice mixture. For our coating, we're going to set that aside. Now what we're going to do is we're going to make our wet mixture. After we do the flour, we'll put it in the wet, and then we'll roll it in the last mixture that we just made, and then we're going to go ahead and let them set on a tray for a few minutes and let them soak it in, and then we're going to fry them up. So my mixture is going to be made with eggs. You can use real eggs if you want. Again, you can use to make this mixture, if there's going to be some left over, I'll actually use it a little later for some chicken or tofu or whatever. I'm going to use the egg substitute. I'm going to put some of that in. Again, I am looking at the amount of tomatoes I have, so I'm going to make a nice large batch. So let me get a little bit more. Next thing I'm going to add is, some people will use milk. I like to use buttermilk. This is the only time you will see me use buttermilk, so it's a rarity. I like to put some buttermilk right in there. Again, I'm not measuring. Next thing I'm going to add, and don't freak out, some sour cream. Get my spoon, put a nice big dollop of sour cream in there. Also, the next thing I like to put in here would be Frank's hot sauce. Now, I didn't realize that I was out. That's normally something I never run out of, but I do have a generic version of this from our local grocer. So I'm not putting a lot in. I'm just going to put probably about a tablespoon, I would say. And you could spice it up as much or as little as you want, or none at all. Now I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to whisk that together. Make sure that that sour cream solidifies in there. So the next thing I'm going to do, now we are totally prepped. I'm going to set up our station for all three, both of our dredging and our fluid, and then one to set the tomatoes once they're coated to rest, and then we'll get going here. Okay, so I've got my station all set up, and the only thing missing is my metal tongs, which seem to be missing in action, so I need to pick up a couple more pair of those. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start with a tomato. I'm going to dredge it through the flour, making sure to coat it all the way. I am now going to dip that into my liquid, submerge it. This is where tongs will come in handy. And then very simply, I'm going to put it in my batter. Flip that. Pat it. Shake it off. And now we're going to go ahead and set it there, and we're going to keep filling that up and work in batches. Again, dredge, liquid, spreading, try and get those sides, make sure it comes off again, lay it down. And then we'll put this to the side, and then we will start a new tray. I have my area all set up. Of course, I have my breaded green tomatoes. I have my frying pan. I've got vegetable oil in here. And I've got it probably, I would say, about a half of an inch to an inch in here. And you could do either or. You could cover it as they go in, as you will see, or you could just have it like I do, which is partially covered. And then also I have my draining area, of course, which is a grid on top of an older towel with some paper towel for the tomatoes to drain when they're done to get all that excess grease. And we don't want to forget 2 utensils. When we go to turn them over, we want to have 2. It's going to make it a little easier, and it's going to make it so that you lessen your chance of getting burned. So I'm going to go ahead, heat up the oil, and we're going to get started. Okay, so now what I'm going to do to test, I'm going to take just a little piece of breading. I'm going to drop it in, and I can see now that the grease is nice and hot. So I'm going to put my first one in. Second one. Third one. I don't want to overfill, I don't want to stack them. I'm going to set my timer for 2 minutes, and then we're going to check and see how that goes. I don't want this too high, I want it at about 350-ish. And what we'll do, since this is our first batch, we're just going to check, make sure everything's looking okay. Yeah, that's good. Okay, now we're going to flip them. Oh yeah, nice and brown. Beautiful. set that timer again for 2 minutes. Now I'm going to take them, drain some of the excess oil, put them on a plate, and then I'll transfer them over to the draining pad. We've got the camera in the way right now, which is why I'm using the plate. You can never be too careful when you're dealing with any hot oil. Now we're going to start again. Set our timer for 2 minutes. So we are well on our way to finishing these wonderful fried green tomatoes. Now, here is the test. I'm going to do a single and then I'm going to bring you down and show you how I'm going to use these. You heard that crunch? That's amazing. Yum. They're wonderful on the inside. They're nice and tender, but they're not soggy. And that outside has that wonderful crunch, especially with all that extra stuff we put in that breading. So now, what I'm going to do after I show you what I'm going to do with this and one of my awesome sandwiches I make with them, you want to remember you can take this and use ranch sauce or any type of sauce that you like to use, any type of Italian dressing, any type of like a roulade sauce with mayonnaise base. I like them when I eat them alone with a nice dill dip. They're just amazing with the dill. The dill just sets that wonderful acidity of the tomato right off. So what I'm going to do after the sandwich I'm going to show you is I am going to take them as I finish them. I'm going to put them on a cookie sheet with parchment paper. I'm going to do a quick freeze in the freezer and just one single layer. And then I'm going to bag them up and freeze them. And then I can pull them out and simply put them in the air fryer and enjoy them all winter long and pass them out to friends. So let's go down to the table. Let's see this amazing sandwich. And then I'm going to finish the batch and freeze them. Okay, so here we go. I've got my pita bread and I've got it partially toasted. It's not too done, but it's firm enough to hold the sandwich because there's a lot to hold here. We're going to start with some mayo. If you're into Miracle Whip, you do Miracle Whip. If you're into the real mayo, you do the real mayo. I'm doing the veggie mayo because that's what works for me. Put a nice amount on the bottom. I'm going to put a little bit of Dijon mustard. to help set off those tomatoes. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to put some nice thin sliced onion. I'm using red onions. And the next thing I'm going to do is put 3 fried green tomatoes right on there. Now the next thing I'm going to do is grab my bacon with melted cheddar cheese on it. Come on, little guy. Get off there. You can do real bacon if you want. I'm doing the vegan bacon and also vegan cheddar cheese, but it is amazing. I actually like this better than real bacon and cheddar. Now what I'm going to do is, as crazy as this seems, I'm going to throw a ripe tomato on there because these are right from the garden and they are so ripe and they are sweet and wonderful. Even though we have the fried tomatoes, that's going to set that off. A friend gave me some homemade bread and butters. I'm going to put a few of those on there. Yeah, I know, almost a Dagwood. Let's see, come on. Get up there. There we go. And now, grab the top, finish that off with just a little bit more mayonnaise. And just a little bit of the Dijon mustard. The only thing missing is the dill dip. Put that on there. Get that in place. Get rid of some of the shrapnel. This would be wonderful on sourdough bread as well. There we go. Okay. Yum. Look at that. All right, let's see how we do here. Mmm. Mmm, mmm, mmm. Oh, that's amazing. That's absolutely incredible. I have to say that's almost even better than being at Kirchhoff's in Paducah. Well, there we go. So now I'm going to bring us back toward the end. We're going to see how we process the rest of those tomatoes. Again, I'm going to put them on a single layer parchment tape paper in the freezer, do a quick freeze, and then I'm going to bag them up in freezer bags, and I'm going to put them in the freezer to pass out to friends and also to enjoy this winter. All right. So what I've done is I have flash freezed all of my fried green tomatoes that I did, and I did many batches. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go ahead, now that they are frozen, they're nice and hard, and now they're not going to stick together when I put them in the freezer. I put them in dated and labeled freezer bags. You want to make sure you get the freezer bags, not just the regular Loctite bags. You don't want them freezer burned after all of that. Now once I get them in there, I'm going to close them part of the way. Then I'm going to go ahead and make sure that I get most of the air out. Add them to the bowl. And you decide how many you want to put in a serving based on your family and how many people are going to be eating them. Air out. Okay, so there is another batch. All of the bags are sealed. And now I can take this and put this in a gallon size, because these are quart size freezer bags, like I've done here. And now that's going to go back into the freezer for our winter pantry for eating. And one of the things, you know, a lot of folks would look at this and say, my goodness, that's a lot of fried green tomatoes. But we love to share them with friends and family. We also like to distribute them with when somebody is food vulnerable and they're having a hard time making ends meet. It's just a nice thing to have a lot of extra food in the freezer, at least that's the way I feel, so that you can share the bounty. Well, there you have it. If you're new to fried green tomatoes, I hope that gives you a few ideas of how to explore and enjoy this wonderful, what I think is a delectable treat, and all the different ways it can be served. If not, if you've been enjoying them for a long time, I hope I added a little bit of alternative things to explore with your fried green tomato cooking. So as always, we shall see you down the road. Take care of yourself, take care of each other. And if you like this video, hit like and subscribe for more cooking videos and art videos and textile art videos. See you down the road.
I know a place where we can go and be